Listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to say might be the most uncomfortable truth you've ever heard. Most of you are losing in life, not because you're weak, not because you're unlucky, and not because you don't have potential. You're losing because you keep making one mistake that destroys your respect, your peace, and your power every single day. And the scary part is, you don't even realize you're doing it. You think you're being mature. You think you're being reasonable. You think you're protecting your image. But in reality, you're handing your power to people who don't deserve it. You're giving explanations to people who don't care. You're defending yourself to people who already decided to misunderstand you. You're arguing with people who secretly enjoy watching you lose control. And if you don't stop, you will spend your entire life trying to prove your worth to the wrong audience. Let me tell you something that might shock you. The strongest people in the world don't defend themselves. They don't chase respect. They don't argue to be understood. They move in silence, and their life becomes the proof. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why staying quiet is not weakness. It's dominance. You'll learn why the moment you start explaining yourself, you've already lost. Why some people provoke you on purpose just to control your emotions. And why silence is the most terrifying weapon you can use in a world full of noise. So if you've ever been disrespected, misunderstood, falsely accused, or emotionally drained by people who love drama, stay with me until the end. Because once you hear what I'm about to reveal, you will never defend yourself the same way again. Most people don't realize this, but the moment you start defending yourself, you have already made a psychological mistake. And it's not a small one, it's not just a social error, it's a power error. Because when you defend yourself, you are not simply explaining your side of the story. You are doing something far deeper. You are handing over authority. You are quietly placing someone else in the position of judge, and you are stepping into the role of the accused. Think about how strange that is. You didn't ask for a trial, you didn't agree to a courtroom, you didn't request their opinion. Yet the second you start explaining yourself, you accept their framing, you accept their accusation as something worthy of debate, and that is where the trap begins. Because now the conversation is no longer about truth, it's about control. This is why emotionally immature people love to provoke you. They don't want clarity, they want leverage. They want to see you scramble. They want to see you nervous. They want to see you working for approval. Because once you start defending yourself, you signal something to them without saying a word. You signal that their perception matters more than your peace. And when someone learns that they can disturb you with their opinion, they will continue to do it. Not because they are powerful, but because they have discovered that you are available to be shaken. The human mind is wired in a way that makes this even more dangerous. Psychologically, the person who explains is often perceived as the person who is uncertain, not because they are wrong, but because explanation looks like persuasion, and persuasion looks like insecurity. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths about human nature. People do not respond to truth the way they respond to confidence. They respond to certainty. They respond to stability. They respond to the person who does not need to prove anything. That's why the world often respects the wrong people. The loudest person in the room is not always the smartest, but the loudest person often gets believed. The calmest person is not always innocent, but the calmest person often gets respected. And the person who over-explains is not always guilty, but the person who over-explains often looks guilty. This isn't fair, but it is real. And if you want to move through life with strength, you have to understand how perception works. When you defend yourself, you also make another mistake. You assume the other person is operating in good faith. You assume they genuinely want to understand. You assume they care about accuracy, but in many situations, they don't. Some people accuse you because they are confused, and those people can be reasoned with, but others accuse you because they want dominance. They want to put you beneath them. They want to make you small. They want to establish a hierarchy where they are above you and you are beneath them. And if you defend yourself to those people, you are playing their game. You are responding on their terms. You are negotiating your dignity with someone who never intended to be fair. This is why defending yourself is so exhausting, because it's not just one conversation. It becomes a habit. It becomes a lifestyle. You start living like your character is always under review, like your intentions are always suspicious, like your identity is something you must constantly clarify. And that is not freedom. That is psychological imprisonment. There's a philosophical idea that can change your entire mindset if you truly understand it. It's this: the only thing you truly own in life is your internal state, your values, your discipline, your integrity, your choices. Everything else is external. Reputation is external. Public opinion is external. Praise is external. Criticism is external. And the moment you start defending yourself too much, you are building your life on the unstable foundation of external validation. You are letting the world tell you who you are. And that is one of the most dangerous ways to live, because the world is inconsistent. The world is emotional. The world is unfair. The world will love you one day and misunderstand you the next. So if your identity depends on people understanding you, you will always be anxious. You will always be reacting. You will always be explaining. And you will never be at peace. Let me say it even more directly. If you have to convince someone of your worth, you have already lowered yourself. Because true worth doesn't negotiate. True value doesn't argue. True character doesn't panic. It stays consistent. It stays stable. It stays grounded. And when you know who you are, you don't feel the need to correct every opinion about you. Now, this doesn't mean you never speak up. It doesn't mean you allow lies to destroy your life. It doesn't mean you accept injustice. But there is a difference between addressing a situation and defending your ego. There is a difference between clarifying facts and begging for understanding. The difference is emotional posture. One is calm, one is desperate, one is strategic, one is reactive. Defending yourself is often emotional. It comes from fear, fear that people will believe the wrong thing, fear that you will lose respect, fear that you will lose relationships, fear that you will lose your reputation. And because it comes from fear, it makes you do things that are beneath you. It makes you talk too much. It makes you explain your intentions to people who never cared. It makes you reveal details that should have remained private. It makes you chase approval like it's oxygen. And the more you defend yourself, the more you train people to treat you like someone who must prove himself. Here's the brutal reality. People learn how to treat you based on what you tolerate and what you respond to. If someone makes a small accusation and you instantly start explaining, they learn that accusations work on you. If someone doubts you and you rush to prove yourself, they learn that doubt controls you. If someone disrespects you and you argue to regain their respect, they learn that disrespect is a lever they can pull whenever they want your attention. This is why defending yourself too much creates a pattern. You think you are protecting your image, but you are actually teaching people how to manipulate you. And there's another deeper psychological truth. The more you defend yourself, the more you become emotionally attached to the outcome of the conversation. You want them to understand. You want them to admit they were wrong. You want them to apologize. You want them to validate you. And they don't, you feel frustrated. You feel powerless. You feel angry. And suddenly your mood is in their hands. That is the opposite of strength. Strength is when your emotional stability does not depend on someone else's perception. Strength is when you can be misunderstood and still remain calm. Strength is when you can be accused and still remain grounded. Strength is when you can be criticized and still keep your posture. Because here is what happens when you stop defending yourself. People start realizing they can't control you with their opinions. They can't shake you with rumors. They can't bait you with insults. They can't provoke you into emotional performances. And when people can't control you, they either respect you or they leave. Both outcomes are a win. You also begin to reclaim something priceless: time, energy, focus, because defending yourself drains you. It steals your attention from the things that actually matter. It distracts you from your goals. It pulls you away from your purpose. And most importantly, It pulls you away from your inner peace. When you stop defending yourself, you start living with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. You start understanding that people will believe what they want, and you cannot fix every misunderstanding. You cannot correct every false narrative. You cannot rescue your reputation from every mouth that speaks about you. But you can control your character. You can control your actions. You can control your consistency. And over time, the truth becomes obvious, not because you argued for it, but because you lived it. So the next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, pause and ask a simple question. Am I speaking to clarify truth, or am I speaking because my ego feels threatened? Because if it's your ego, silence will teach you more than words ever will. Silence will train your confidence. Silence will protect your peace. Silence will remind you that you don't need permission to be who you are. And that is the ultimate mindset shift. The moment you stop defending yourself, you stop living as if you're on trial. You start living like you already know your value. Because the truth is simple. When you know who you are, you don't argue. You don't beg. You don't chase. You don't defend. You just become untouchable. And that is power. Now let's take this one level deeper, because once you understand this next idea, you stop taking people personally. And that alone will change the way you move through the world. Most people don't want the truth. They want a reaction. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's one of the most accurate descriptions of human behavior you will ever hear. Because when someone accuses you, criticizes you, or tries to embarrass you, it often has nothing to do with what you actually did. It has everything to do with what they are trying to get from you emotionally. They are not speaking to communicate, they are speaking to control. And the moment you realize that, you stop responding like a victim and start responding like someone who understands